Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. So I wanted to talk a little bit first about a study that we finished about 2 or 3 years ago now called Exercise for Healthy Aging. And in this study, we enrolled people with HIV and a group of uninfected controls. Everyone was age 50 or older and were sedentary before coming on to the study. For the study, we had all of our participants come into our research center exercise lab, which is kind of like a mini gym for exercise studies. And they exercised 3 days a week, kind of supervised exercise with a trainer for 24 weeks. They did both cardiovascular and resistance training during that time. But we mixed it up a little bit. We had everyone do a moderate intensity of exercise for the first 12 weeks based on what their heart rate, their target heart rate was and how much they could lift in terms of a bench press. And then halfway through the study, we had half of the group advance to a higher intensity exercise and half the group stay at that moderate intensity exercise to see if that added intensity actually helped people or if people had more injuries and more harm. So to start, we looked at a lot of measures of physical function. So not kind of your typical exercise study outcomes that we had seen during the earlier AIDS days, really focused on lipodystrophy and body composition. We were focused more on how people are doing with their function. So we looked at change in a physical function measure called the short physical performance battery. And this includes how quickly someone can stand up from a chair. So very similar to what you all did in some of the exercises earlier. How quickly they can walk 4 meters, so just a short distance across the room, and then how well you can balance kind of standing with your heel to your toe in a straight line. We saw, as you can see in the top row, this is our group with HIV. We saw an improvement in the short physical performance battery, so 12 being a perfect score. We saw that more of our participants with HIV had a perfect score after 24 weeks of exercise. And then we saw some improvement in our controls, but really a lot of them had a fairly normal score at baseline. Next slide, please. We also looked at frailty, and this is kind of a buzzword in the HIV literature that we've been particularly interested in lately. And frailty includes 5 measures of gait speed, grip strength, fatigue, physical activity, and unexpected weight loss. So we looked at the number of components of frailty at baseline and after exercise. And again, people with HIV on the left side of this figure, you can see that those that had no frailty components in the blue color increased as the exercise intervention went on, meaning that people had a decrease in those frailty components with exercise. Next slide. And then we were also really interested in whether a more intense or more vigorous exercise had added benefits. And so here we just compared improvements in the second half of the intervention after they were randomized to either the high or the moderate intensity of exercise. And you can see across the board in that blue bar that in general, people with HIV tended to have a bit more improvement the more intensely they exercised, kind of as we'd expect. There were some measures that we really didn't see a difference or that we actually saw that the moderate intensity, that people favored the moderate intensity, but in general, those on the higher intensity tended to do better. Next slide. We were also interested in what happens to body composition. Do people get thinner? Do they build up more muscle mass and lose fat with exercise? And we certainly did see that both in our people with HIV in the red dot and in our control population in the blue square. We saw an increase in lean mass of about 1 kilogram. And this lean mass is kind of a proxy for muscle mass that we can measure on a DEXA scan. And we also saw about a 1 to 2 kilogram loss in fat. So all really nice improvements that we saw with exercise over 24 weeks. Next slide. Unfortunately, we called all of our participants about 3 months after they completed the intervention, and relatively few of them were doing any exercise. So about 50% were or less than 50% were exercising even 1 day a week. And so this was really disappointing. We saw these marked improvements in physical function, in body composition. People did better on some of our quality of life questionnaires, but no one kept exercising. So we shifted gears a little bit. We really wanted to know how can we better incorporate physical activity both in the clinic and beyond across all ages to actually get people to start exercising and continue exercising. So I one more on that one. So we collaborated with a group of researchers including Kelly on this talk here, that were interested in physical activity in people with HIV. And we developed an exercise prescription, just something that can be used in the clinic. The healthcare provider can work with the patient to set some short-term and long-term goals, just to get people out there with a small goal of maybe starting with 1 day a week at a light intensity of exercise, or starting with a step goal, just to get people to start exercising. Next slide now. And another thing that we wanted to do was try to spread exercise into the community. And so I partnered with one of our AIDS service organizations, the Colorado Health Network, and we applied for some funding from a local grant in Colorado to try to extend some exercise into the community. This was funded as the Health Well program, and we were supposed to start in March 2020, but as all of you on the call know, something else happened in March 2020, and so this got postponed for several months. And we ultimately ended up converting it to a virtual program when we realized that COVID was not ending anytime soon. And it actually ended up really kind of an intriguing program, and I think it was a great start. So we converted all of our, we had these education sessions that we converted to weekly Zoom meetings, and these covered topics from meditation, healthy diet, good sleep, kind of overall health topics. Each of the participants in the program also had one-on-one Zoom meetings with a dietitian to review what they're doing with their diet. And then to focus on that physical activity part, we had all of the participants received a pedometer and had a target step count goal. So they tried to increase their step count by about 5% each week. And then one of the kind of unique and fun things that ended up a last minute add-on to the program was that we had a partner at the Denver Botanic Garden who was very interested in kind of outdoor education and had small in-person groups of guided walks with masked participants. We had a limited number of participants that could go, and they would walk around the gardens and learn about the different plants and kind of have some nature appreciation. I think that was really one of the most popular parts of the program and went over really well. Our first round of participants just completed the program a couple of weeks ago, and we're still waiting to have some outcomes. We're going to modify things slightly and have another virtual program, and then hopefully one more in-person program as we continue to go. And the next slide. We were also really curious about some of those improvements that we saw in the high intensity group in our first study. And although we do want to get people active, we also want to try to maximize improvements and really try to get people up to their baseline. If people are interested, we want to push them as much as they're willing to be pushed. And so we took a step back and said, what other types of high intensity exercise might people enjoy more and be willing to continue to do after our in-person intervention? And so digging into the literature a little bit, we came across high intensity interval training, which is kind of a hot topic in some exercise literature right now, which is just short bouts of high intensity exercise with rest periods in between. People tend to have a little bit more benefit over a shorter amount of time. And so our thought was maybe we could have some of those benefits. People might be engaged, might think it's more interesting, and might stick with it over the long term. And it might be something that they're more willing to do at home. So we put in for a study funded by the National Institutes of Health called the Health Study. And we also paired that high intensity exercise with a M-Health intervention where patients will receive, or participants will get text messaging to try to improve their adherence to exercise over time. Unfortunately, this was supposed to start in the fall and is on hold now, but we're hoping to start enrolling in the next month or so. So thank you very much.
So I have two questions that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to wait if there's any in the chat for you. So the first one I'm going to ask you is, because of the participants, I'm going to specifically look at your HIV participants. Do you have a knowledge of whether they were recently infected, long-term cases, or did it matter in your sampling?
They had to have had HIV and be on treatment for at least 2 years to be eligible for the study. Our average duration of time on treatment was about 20 years. So it tended to be a much longer term infection. I think the shortest was probably about 3 to 4 years, but in general, it was a much longer duration of treatment and infection.
Okay, and then my second question would be, since you're in Colorado, how about all the other states? Have you reached out to any other states to see if they're doing anything like yourself, or Are you just the anomaly?
Yeah, no, so we're very interested in that. In fact, the health study, we're partnering with a colleague of mine who's at Case Western in Ohio, because we thought Colorado is very different than some Midwest states and some Southern states. And so we will have 50 people from Colorado and 50 people from her site as part of that study. We really would like to expand to other sites and kind of see how well our interventions can work in other locations. Part of it was just what we can afford underneath the grant budget. And so that's kind of the perk of trying to have some of these more cost-effective studies like the Health Well study, where it's not quite as costly. I think we can roll those out better. Several colleagues on that review paper are doing similar programs. I know Kristine Erlandson in Virginia is actually doing a telehealth exercise program for veterans, where they can all gather in a room and then have an exercise, sort of what we did at the beginning of this, where there's a coach that's leading them through exercises. So I think there's definitely other programs that are starting.
Okay.
So George, we have a couple of questions in the chat room.
Go ahead.
One is specifically for Kristine, and the other one is for all the panelists, so we'll wait until later for that one. So question from Joe Keating is, Joe, this is, I think, yes. Are there any safety considerations for starting an HIIT program with people who are at the lower end of the fitness spectrum?
Definitely. I think that's one of our reasons that we definitely want to do this in person, is so that there is supervision. Participants are being watched closely by an exercise trainer to make sure that they're doing the exercises correctly. And all of our participants undergo a cardiovascular stress test before they start exercising to make sure that they're safe to exercise from a cardiovascular standpoint. Each participant's exercise is matched to their heart rate and their maximum strength. And so it is pretty individualized. And so from that standpoint, I think it does enhance the safety a bit, because they're working at what their maximum intensity is. And so, you know, in our last study, we also had a high intensity group, and we do ease into it over some time too, to make sure that they're not going from nothing to high intensity. They have a few weeks lead-in period to get used to those exercises.
As well, thank you very much, Kristine. We have one more question for you, and then George has to move to the other panelists. The other question for you is, it says, thank you for your presentation, Dr. Erlandson. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Do you think there are, or there would be any differences in gender, age, socioeconomic status in engagement in physical activity?
Absolutely. And we had a small group that came into our exercise study who were very interested in exercising. So we certainly had a biased population that wanted to come in and exercise. But in some of the larger studies, just looking at physical activity in larger cohorts, there are absolutely some age, gender, socioeconomic differences in those who exercise more. And then I just noticed one of the other questions asked if there were differences between the male participants and female participants. And unfortunately, we had a really difficult time enrolling women in this study. We went and really targeted enrollment of women. I personally contacted almost every woman in our clinic to try to get women in. And some of it was timing of when the gym was open, transportation, childcare issues. But that, I think we enrolled maybe 5 women. And so that's a big push with enrolling the second site with this study, is trying to get more women enrolled so that we can look better at some of the gender and sex differences.
Well, thank you, Kristine. That was great. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to welcome John, our freelance professional trainer. And John, the question I have for you is, what are your experiences with exercise and web-based online intervention? A question, if you don't mind me jumping in, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your thought process that you go through when you're assessing somebody and developing their workout strategy or their workout plan? Is there a thought process that you go through to assess them?
Yeah. Well, I would kind of look at their overall fitness. So we do like some basic sort of exercises like push-ups and squats and stuff like that, and sort of see what sort of their baseline is. Also, I will ask them what their past experiences are with exercise, like sports related and stuff. So if they've done stuff in the past, they might be inclined to understand an exercise, like some particular exercise more than others, kind of thing. And you can tell with the body too, like how the body responds. So also develop a program sort of like based on that, well, based on their baseline starting, or if they've already have a good range of experience already, then we can sort of, jump into it a little bit more intensely, and to also find out what the goals are, like what they want to get out of this, because people have all kinds of different goals, and I do find as we age too, our goals change. When I was younger, it's basically about looking good and so on and so forth, and the benefit is and then as you get older, it's more about keeping the body strong and keeping the heart going. More than anything, it's not about the aesthetics of it. So
one more question, I guess. During
Sure.
this time of COVID, what's been the hardest or the biggest challenge that you faced so far during this time?
Well, in terms of exercise?
Not just exercising, but also motivating your clientele, motivating people during this time.
Well, I don't think it's been a big challenge for me. I think it's been, very consistent. I think that this is just kind of like a huge blip in the road kind of thing. But I think that if you've kind of like rolled with the punches over the years of stuff like diversity, things that have happened in your life, and not necessarily just this, but divorce and so on and so forth, and becoming HIV or breast cancer kind of thing. These are sort of things that you need to get over, and exercise is really huge component of being able to like mentally be strong to be able to get over these. And that's so I think with COVID, it's basically just making sure you're more safe, I think, in this time, to be able to do exercises, and make sure you know your surroundings and stuff like that. That if you go for a walk, yes, wear a mask. If you're in an area that's a little bit more densely populated and so on and so forth, and just when I run, I don't wear one just because I tend to run faster kind of thing, so it's a little harder to keep that mask on, so I feel safe that way. But if something's not safe, then that's what we need to talk about, and you need to figure out, like, if you don't feel safe doing it here, let's try it somewhere else, and stuff like that. To be able to be flexible and adaptable.
Oh, thank you, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I'm going to move over now to Zoran and Ivan. So the two of you, I don't know who wants to speak first, but give us a little story about what's happening in the community to pivot with the pandemic to online exercising platforms, which you're, I think, one of the experts in right now with the YMCA.
So the next slide is the Sweat for Good app. We have a tool that we were using it prior to the pandemic to be able to book personal training, and also squash booking, and all the small tools that will help us to come close to the technology and keep up with the technology, actually. And in the Sweat for Good app was mainly focused on booking the personal training, booking some classes, and so and so. But definitely, again, we quickly adapted, and today's app is able to book a class, online class. As you can see, we're all teaching from home now. At the YMCA, we have a beautiful studio in each facility. Well, we used to teach from there, but because we are in lockdown, now we're teaching from home. So Kelly, if you want to move, yeah. So this is the let me just move this stuff. There we go. So this is the application for the app, and it's very friendly to use. So as you can see, it has the schedule. You can book a class. As I mentioned, we have over 100 classes in a month. For example, I'm teaching at 5 p.m. today, and I will have just about 100 participants participating in one of the classes, from muscle field to boot camp to body fit. So I'm going to talk later about the types of classes we have. But as I mentioned, we had to adapt very quickly into that. And also, if you go back, Kelly, one slide, previous slide, please. I want to say that you see now web shop. So we quickly adjusted our price for those members who are using just online classes. Again, this is just temporary use for something. And we still have thousands of members still active with us. Because of the lockdown, of course, all of the membership is frozen, but we offer this opportunity for the members to still stay active and participate in our classes. Thank you, Kelly. Move on. So for this, with this app, as you can see, we have personalized workout plans. This is very good tool for the personal trainers to set up a specialized plan for the clients, so they can work out between the sessions. So it's very useful for our clients. And then, of course, we had unlimited class to over 100 classes per month. Different types of classes, as I mentioned, from yoga to Ariba, which is very similar to Zumba, Total Fit, which is a full workout body with high intensity interval training, and much more. I'm teaching Muscle Fit later, so we have Body Fit as all this stuff. The community panel here as well. We're sharing some news with our members, so they can stay in communication with us. So it's very useful tool. And then lately we partner up with Particip Action. So in these videos, we are creating videos. Well, all of the main exercises which involve the large skeleton muscle groups are recorded at one shot, actually, but recorded in three different kind of stations. So we have for beginners or those who can work on chair. Then we have the regular setup, which will be more intermediate, and we have a more advanced. So you can see, you can check the web and see the participation. Actually, it's very cool. Cool asset to our members. And then this is another setup that we've done even prior to pandemic. What we did some research, and knowing that the seniors have a little bit more free time, so we start doing shifting some strategy about how can we involve and bring more members, older adults, into our buildings. So we said, let's say if they come from 1 to 4, we have discount price. So we did different strategies because we know that older adults are the percentage of older adults, it's higher than actually percentage of the newborn in general in Canada. So definitely, again, we're shifting. Whatever happened 20 years ago when we had packed of the classes with young adult and kids, now it's time to switch and focusing much more on older adults, but also making sure that we're aligned with the rest of the programs. So we designed the bright spot even prior to the pandemic, where you can see the educational, the fitness, and the social components. So some of the fitness classes that you see on the screen, like let's say Body Fit Gentle, the same class it's linked to our Sweat for Good app, so everyone is coming together, and actually either you are going through a Bright Spot or through a good Sweat for Good app, you're actually going to the same class. This is free of charge, so I strongly recommend for all of you that are here to definitely try. And as you can see, we have some language classes, some thank you, Kelly, for sharing, some language classes, events, trivia. We have all that social components that, again, the seniors are much more interested, as well as the body. We have mindfulness classes, which is, I'm strongly recommend for everyone, especially in this the pandemic. It's very helpful, and they're free of charge through the Bright Spot. So if you have time, please visit our web, the Bright Spot, and then go and check some of the classes.
Actually, Zoran, that leads us to one of the questions that's in the chat room, which I'm going to read out to you.
Yeah.
It says, I have been living with HIV for 30 years, and past medications have ruined my bones, bowels, and brains. I am now 73 years old. Major problems for me is balance and keeping active, not aerobics, as I used to do 20 years ago. I have lost my self-confidence because of falls. Any ideas from the panel, please?
Sure. I will, first of all, I will strongly recommend to do some of the body fit chair class and build stability with that. So on the Bright Spot, there are plenty of exercises and nice group classes, starting with 30 minutes only. Body fit gentle is very good as well. So basically, building on the balance, a lot of balanced exercises as well. Actually, we do have a class that goes, it's called Balance, on Monday at 11 a.m. And those classes are, as I mentioned, they're tuned to help the seniors to be much stronger, fall prevention, increasing the flexibility, increasing the strength, increasing the balance. So everything is incorporated into that class of 30 minutes.
Well, thank you. Is there any other questions? I don't see. So I'm going to move us along because we're running close to our next question. So our next question is a free-for-all, and it's going to go through all of our panelists. And I'm going to be asking you, what do you think about when it comes to physical activity during this COVID pandemic? And in regards to any either research, programming, service deliveries, or any clinical practices. And I'm going to start, I guess let's start with Zoran, since we have you right now. Is there anything that you want to say? Or I'll give you 2 minutes each. How's that?
So I think that during the pandemic, again, we have to adjust quickly, and us as researchers, as an organization who can help with physical activity, to find the challenge for our public, for people outside to reach as well to us. We have so many programs to offer. The only some of the challenges we are facing with the research, I mean, with the physical activity is, first of all, we live in Canada. Outside is cold, so we need to adjust to be able to be at home and to be able to offer that many classes. So at the beginning, we have some technical difficulties with the participants, but very quickly the members were able to adapt. We're also part of the research with Diabetic Canada and McMaster Hospital that me and Ivan are deeply involved with. And again, I'm finding out that if you have a specific group, and if you guide them now, if you're connecting through online more often, you will get the result. Because again, everything is limited resources, and I'm finding out that that's helpful. So more specific groups to do some kind of research or guiding them.
Thanks, Zoran. So I'm going to move over to John. Any ideas, John? And what do you think we need to think about when it comes to physical activity during this COVID pandemic? You're muted, John.
Well, Zoran's touched on stuff like he said about being adjust quite quickly, which we needed to do. But sort of to add to that, because I am Canadian, that I do really enjoy the outdoors in the winter. So I think we need to explore that that people need to, because they there's a rink across the street from me here, and that's been opened and stuff. So I think it's important to get outside, get that vitamin D that we need at this time. So utilize the open skating rinks and stuff like that. And there are some open ski places for cross country right now, not downhill, but because it's closed for now. And so just enjoying the outside, enjoying the nature, enjoying the beautiful landscapes of the winter and stuff outside here. So I think that we need to not forget the outdoors in the winter, because I think a lot of people sort of forget that, thinking it's cold, and just make sure you dress warm enough to go outside. So I would emphasize that, I think, in just enjoying the outdoors more.
Thank you. So Kristine, I'm going to move over to you as our last panelist. Any ideas on any research or programs or anything?
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe we haven't appreciated quite as much is how sedentary everyone's become over the last year. We're not walking around the grocery store as often. We're not walking to and from work, or even to and from the car as much, as at least I'm not as much. So I think even trying to decrease sedentary activity in addition to increasing kind of planned physical activity is an important part of staying healthy. And then I think also making sure that we can engage populations that may not have access to virtual programs, whether it's through computer literacy issues, they're not able to, or they don't have adequate internet access to get onto some of these virtual programs, or they don't have a smartphone or a computer at home to access it. So just making sure that we're creating opportunities for everyone to exercise regardless of their resourst.
Great. So thank
George,
you.
may I jump in here
Sure.
very briefly, because there's someone who's worked with with Kristine, my apologies, Kristine. And Michael, are you able to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience? I understand that you've worked with Kristine in one of our studies she presented today. Are you there? There you go. Hi.
Hi.
Where are you calling us from?
I'm in Denver. Kristine and I go way back. She's a wonderful, wonderful person and a great friend of the community. And she presents at our forums and all kinds of things and comes to our CAB meetings and all the rest of it. And I really love the work that she does, because it's very real time, real life, real world type work. So I participated in the Health Well study. And one of the things that was kind of interesting about it was that in addition to, increasing our steps and walking more and getting more physical exercise, there was the psychosocial component, because we walked around the botanic gardens. And so I never knew any of these other guys that were participating. And we just kind of sort of became friends. And some people I kind of became better friends with than some others. So I kind of made some new friends. And we also connected and shared some resources. So my organization does an HIV retreat in the mountains each summer. And I think I got a couple of people interested in that. And then another guy told me about Senior Planet, and I checked that out, and that turned out to be pretty amazing. So there was that whole component. And then we had these sessions on Zoom, and Kristine led one, which is on end-of-life planning, which is always an uncomfortable subject, but it was really educational, and it was just very real. We had a cooking thing, various things like that. So there were other major components to that really added to the study. It wasn't just, and I think that's why it was pretty successful. It wasn't just, let's walk, walk more. And I am walking more. My dog loves it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Michael, which one of you is in the picture?
I was going to say the same thing. Are you brown or the blonde?
I'm dark. Hi.
Hello.
No, it's remember
G.I. Joe?
anti-gay people say it's Adam and Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So I guess that's Adam and Steve.
Good.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So that's great. And I want to thank all of our panelists for being here and being active. And if there's any questions anybody has, even after today's sessions, please feel free to email me and we'll reach out to our great panelists and ask them anything else going on. And we're going to move on. And we're going to move to our updates. So
amazing. Oh, here we have some slides. So folks, here we have some updates for you. We'll be brief on them and we're thrilled that you're here. So in the assessing the utility of the short version of the health and disability questionnaire, you know, those of you who are involved in the business of research, you know that when you get your REB approval, which is tantamount to your license to operate, you uncork the, you know, the bubbly and you have a party because it takes a long time to get through that. So we actually did, and we're thrilled to be working with 10 community-based and clinical sites in Canada to recruit, I think we're recruiting 10 adults per site and 2 community service partners. As you've mentioned before, and some of you, getting participants, it sounds easy, but it's not. And for a number of reasons, and some of those are divided along gender lines, including women, transgender women and transgender men. So all these things, although they are here in one line, they actually take a lot of time to get in place. Is that right, Kelly?
Yes, just wanted to also say thanks to all the partners for getting to this stage of the study. And I do see that there are some really good questions still coming through the chat. So we do have some time. So we will not maybe let our panelists go just yet to allow some more time for discussion. But thanks, Francisco. I'll keep moving the slides along.
Okay, so updates on the telecoaching. So Kelly and a wonderful group of people and me, we actually, ouch, we have been thinking about doing things online way before, you know, this whole thing became imperative. I will not bother you with TMI information about being gay and being online when it was torrid and horrible to be online, because now everybody's online. So because of those many reasons, we're involved in a couple of studies on telecoaching, one of them aided by this amazing group of students. But this particular one is part of the community-based exercise research study, program of study, and funded by the Ontario HIV Treatment Network, which is an organization here in the city of Toronto, working for the province of Ontario. And of course, with our friends, as you've seen them, they're super dedicated. They're experts from the Y and physical therapy at the University of Toronto. The aim of that study is to evaluate the implementation of an online telecoaching community-based exercise intervention for adults living with HIV. It's a 12-month prospective mixed method study to evaluate the intervention, and the participants are 30 diverse adults living with HIV. And so we have under ethics review. Again, we're going to face all the different, you know, when we try to organize these things, there's so many steps as to what we are able to do, what we're able to say, how we're able to promote it. You all are familiar with all of that business of research, and so we're going through it very valiantly. And we say thank you specifically to our partners, because on their side, that becomes a bit of a wait time, and we appreciate their patience. And as I mentioned, we have an amazing group of students. I hope that I don't know if we have some of them today here, and I hope they're taking classes. They're very busy, but what they're doing with us is identifying the considerations for launching a telecoaching intervention. We want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, but not only the personal reasons, which are of course very important, but also institutional reasons, technical, you know, challenges that people are facing. So they're conducting between 12 and 15 qualitative interviews with stakeholders and persons with lived experience who participate in virtual rehab, telehealth, and community-based exercise. I think one of the great things we're doing in Ontario, there's something called the Ontario Telehealth Network. And those folks, they do not have a lot of programs for HIV specifically, but they have a lot of programs for persons living with chronic and episodic conditions. So they've accepted to lend their expertise through these interviews, and we're really, really thrilled with that.
So that's it. So I want to thank everybody for attending. And if there's anything else, please go to our evaluation page, look at it, give us some input, some thoughts on how this went and how you enjoyed it, and any upcoming sessions that you'd like to be part of our community of practice going forward. So again, thank you everybody for coming.
Unmute your microphones and just heckle and say goodbye and let yourself be heard. Thank you so much for being here. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye,
everyone. That was amazing. Nice to see you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
See you again soon.